Welcome to Keiko Vision, a podcast to pump you up to change the world. Hosted by me, Jordana. Let's get started.
Hi, and welcome to Keiko Vision with Jordana. I'm Jordana, and I will be your host. So it's mid-March, which means that you've probably either filed your tax returns or the thought has at least crossed your mind. And if you're like me, you've got about a month, and then you'll be frantically looking for all of your paperwork and documents and scrambling to file on time or file an extension on time. So in this episode, we're going to talk about taxes. And like everything else that we talk about, our tax system is rigged so that the wealth continues to accumulate at the top without funneling down to support the rest of society. There are many different types of taxes, from sales tax on the things that we buy, to property taxes on the things that we own or the property that we own, and income taxes, which is what we're going to talk about today. The primary source of income for most Americans is a salary. And so people work, taxes are taken out automatically, and at tax time, you're basically settling up. Taxes are the largest form of revenue for the U.S. government, and it supports our infrastructure, our education. It's used to provide for national programs such as our defense, veterans, foreign affairs, social programs, community development, law enforcement. So we all pay into this pool of money, and then it gets dispersed based on our needs as a country. The U.S. has a progressive tax system. So income taxes range from 10 to 37%, and they kick in at different income thresholds. So income tax includes payroll taxes, and these are taken right out of your paycheck. It also includes capital gains. So these are investments that increased in value. You sold it, you made a profit, and you are now paying tax on that profit. And these are taxed at a lower rate. So the capital gains tax maxes out at 20%. So if your income is under $445,000, the capital gains tax is at a rate of 15%, which is much lower than the 35 to 37% that you would be paying if this income was generated through a salary. In a progressive tax system, like what's in place in the United States, the marginal tax rate is the tax that you pay on each additional dollar of income. So for simplicity's purposes, let's say that the first $50,000 that you make, you're taxed 10%, and then there's a marginal tax rate. For the next $50,000, you are taxed at a 20% rate. So you would first take the first $50,000 and the 10% of $50,000, which would be $5,000. And then for that additional $50,000, from $50,000 to $100,000 of income, you would be charged 20%. So that would be $10,000. You'd add the two together, $15,000 in taxes for that income. So that's how a progressive tax system works. And now in the United States, there are many more breakpoints, and taxes range from 10 to 37%. Now, at the end of World War II, in 1945, the top marginal tax rate, that was 94%. In 1980, those who were making over $215,000 were taxed at 70% for every additional dollar over that threshold. So $1 in 1980 is equivalent to the purchasing power of over $3 today. So when we talk about $215,000, we're really talking about $645,000. So in 1980, if we were comparing 1980 to today, so those who are making over $645,000, for each additional dollar of income, they were paying 70 cents. Today, the highest marginal tax rate is at 37%. And that's for a married family, those making over $628,000. Not only did this marginal tax rate come down drastically, the 1980s also put into place a lot of rules regarding depreciation of both commercial properties and personal real estate investments, which has had a huge impact. So depreciation expense, often it results in a loss on investment property, even if the property is actually making money. So the property can produce positive cash flow, but then use depreciation to offset that cash flow. And then it can be deducted from ordinary income. So what ultra high net worth individuals are doing to take advantage of this is that they're owning businesses that generate a whole lot of tax deductions, and then they're having that flow through to their personal tax returns. The typical working class Americans don't generate these kinds of business losses that they can offset on their personal income taxes. And in fact, for most Americans, as their property values increase, they have to pay because their properties are appreciating in value, and the property tax associated with that then has to increase as well. There's also a 100-year-old loophole called the step-up basis, which means that when investors sell an asset, like a house, they usually are required to pay capital gains on the increase of the asset's value since the time that they purchased it. But they can get around this. If the original owner dies before selling the asset, the unrealized gains are never subject to income taxes. So their heirs are then required to pay taxes only on the increase of value since the time that they inherited it, which is why they call it the stepped up basis. The tax system in the United States is terrible. The tax code is so complex that the average American has no idea how skewed it is. There is no reason why billionaires should be paying $0 in federal income taxes. There's no reason why large corporations should be paying $0 in federal corporate income tax. These individuals, these corporations, they've got teams of people figuring out how to game the system and how to use the laws that were put in place specifically to benefit those at the top to avoid as much tax as possible. And these tactics, they're all legal. Since this podcast is new, we have no sponsors, so I will shamelessly plug Keiko. And if you get sick of hearing this, then reach out to become a sponsor.
Keiko, the social app. K-A-K-O. Keiko, the social app. K-A-K-O. Keiko, the social app. Keiko rules. Keiko, the social app. Billionaire greed? Keiko, the social app. Destroying America. Keiko, the social app. T-minus 7 years and counting. Keiko, the social app.
And with that, let's get back to the show. Depending on where you get your news from, the imbalanced tax system, this is either a huge problem or no problem at all, which is a huge problem in and of itself. In the Utopia versus Dystopia episode that I released last week, it shows a clip, which is an old clip, but it's a great one. And it shows the media talking about how much of an impact raising taxes would be on the super wealthy and how that would generate $700 billion over a period of years, and how that was just a drop in the bucket of what we need. And then it has clips talking about $1 million and how we need to cut spending in all of these different areas, and how if we cut $1 million here, it'll be good, and $1 million there. At some point, a lot of money is just a lot of money. It's so hard to comprehend the dollars that we're talking about here and how much of an impact they could make if they were put to good use. So 1980s is really when when things started to go to shit. And so basically my entire lifetime, things have been trending in the wrong direction. I've got lots of charts throughout the Utopia vs. Dystopia series, and I've included these online, and I talk about them in the podcast. And you see all of these charts from 1980s on. We're going in the wrong direction. And there is so much money being pumped in from lobbyists and individuals. It is very unlikely that tax loopholes will be removed because there's so much money funding the campaigns of the people that would have to vote for their removal. And that's just not going to happen. ProPublica is a nonprofit news organization that investigates corruption, abuses of power, and they analyzed 15 years of IRS information on billionaires. The information that they looked at covered more than just income and taxes. It included their investments, stock trades, gambling winnings, and even adjustments to income based on IRS audit results. So what they found was that the median American household earned about $70,000 annually. So they paid around 14% in federal taxes. Now, they use median for a reason, because if you use average, it's going to be skewed by the billionaires. So median means that there are as many households that make less as there are that make more. So right in the middle, the typical American household, $70,000 annually, paid about 14% in federal income taxes. ProPublica looked at the 25 richest Americans, and they compared the tax data to the Forbes data, which estimates the wealth of the richest Americans and the wealthiest individuals globally. So if you take the taxes paid versus this estimate in wealth increase from Forbes, ProPublica calls this the true tax rate. So the 25 richest people in America saw their net worth increase a total of $400 billion from 2014 to 2018. They paid a total of $13.6 billion in federal income taxes in those 5 years. That's a true tax rate of 3.4. This is just talking about 25 people. And you see how much of an impact these 25 people have. $401 billion in just a few years. Now, if they would have paid their share, that money would have gone to supporting the rest of society. Look, these billionaires made their money on the backs of hardworking Americans. And now, more than ever, we need them to step up and pay their fair share. And I'm not saying that they should just pay more in taxes than they're supposed to. The rules should be changed, and the corruption should be removed. But that is not going to happen anytime soon. And that's because of lobbyists. And that's because of the money that these individual donors and these special interests can contribute to campaigns. And even some of the billionaires recognize how wrong this is. Warren Buffett has been very vocal about the treatment of billionaires and the inequity that his housekeeper, that his secretary pays more in taxes as a percentage base than he does as a billionaire. So how does this happen? Most Americans pay tax on the money that they earn through working. If they own a home, then they pay property tax on that. But the super wealthy have other assets that the average American just doesn't have. And once you have other assets, there are a whole bunch of tax rules and loopholes that you can then take advantage of. By manipulating tax policy, the super wealthy, super elite, through what seems to be innocent loopholes like depreciation or step up. It's one of the easiest ways for them to write the rules that benefit themselves and that continue to concentrate the wealth. Capital gains tax can be avoided entirely by using the stepped up basis loophole. So it actually incentivizes individuals to hold on to their wealth, pass it down to their kids who then don't have to pay the historical capital gains. They only have to pay capital gains from the time that they inherited it. Think about what that means. If Jeff Bezos dies, all of the capital gains on his Amazon winnings, all that disappears. It's not like it's deferred. It's not like his heirs pay it at some point. No, it's just gone. Once you realize how skewed our tax system is and how much of an impact not catering to these handful of individuals, how much of an impact that would have on the rest of society. We could stabilize our country if we only had a system in place that was fair. And I don't know quite how to put this, because I feel like I say it in every episode, and I guess that's kind of the point, is that we can't depend on our politicians. Like, these guys are dependent on the special interests and the billionaires to fund their campaigns. There will not be enough of them to overturn these loopholes. So what else can we do? Of course, we need to vote, and we need to try to enact long-term change in the rules through those avenues. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. What I am saying is that we can't depend on that. And if we do, all of these trends, all of these charts that I share throughout these series, they're not just magically going to turn around. They're all getting worse, much worse. So I think we need to move this fight into the private market. Our best chance of redistributing wealth in a winner-take-all economy is to create a winner and then use its strength and use its financial power to redistribute in an equitable way. And that's the goal behind Cacao Technologies. It can't be a nonprofit. It can't be restricted. It definitely can't be partisan and taking a political approach. Look, this problem of taxes and people not paying their fair share, that affects everyone. I don't think anybody would look at the top 25 wealthiest people and think, oh yeah, 3%, that sounds okay. 3-4%, no. And you see how impactful just one individual is. Can you imagine if a company like Amazon was structured in a more equitable way from the beginning? How much of an impact that just one company could make, considering just one individual that owns a fraction of that company. How much just taxing him and getting his fair share of support for the rest of our country. Look, he refers to his increase in wealth as his lottery winnings from Amazon. And he's going to use those winnings to fund space exploration. Because there's no way that he could spend all of this money on this planet in his lifetime. There's no way. He recognizes that.
The only way that I can see to deploy this much financial resource is by converting my Amazon winnings into space travel.
So there you have it. Depending on the day, the richest person in the world talking about his space exploration quest because he has too much money to spend here on Earth. And this is why I like to point out the difference between $1 million and $1 billion, because magnitudes matter, particularly here. So 1 million seconds into a year is 12 and a half days. 1 billion seconds is 31.7 years. In 1 year, 2020, Jeff Bezos grew his wealth by $75 billion. So what I think needs to happen is that a group of people need to come together, and in a winner-take-all economy, we create a winner. And I'm not saying I know all of the twists and turns and answers, but I do know that there is a much better way, and that we could use technology to connect local resources, solve problems, and support our neighbors. I talk about Kakao Technologies and the Keiko app in the intro series, so if you missed it, definitely check it out. That's it for this episode of Keiko Vision with Jordana. See you next Tuesday.
Keiko the social app. K-A-K-O. Keiko the social app. K-A-K-O. Keiko the social app. Keiko rules. Keiko the social app. Billionaire greed. Keiko the social app. Destroying America. Keiko the social app. T-minus 7 years and counting. Keiko the social app.